Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Paula Price. I'm with the People's Law School, and we are so excited to be speaking to you today about scams and identity theft. We've got two amazing guest speakers with us, and I will introduce them in just a minute. We mentioned today's webinar is about scams and identity theft, and what you're going to learn today are, number one, some common scams, number two, signs for you to watch for. And number three, what to do if you have been scammed. What you can expect today is we've got about 60 minutes together, and our speakers will be answering common questions about scams and identity theft. What we are providing here today is legal information, not advice, that is current as of today. If what you're looking for is legal advice, in other words, the law as it applies to your particular set of circumstances, we encourage you to seek legal advice. You're welcome to reach out to our speaker, lawyer Lauren Liang. Her contact information is on the screen. And you're also welcome to reach out to the Better Business Bureau. Again, the information is on the screen. And we'd like to acknowledge that we are grateful to work on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, whose peoples continue to live on and care for these lands. And we would invite everybody who has joined us today to reflect on where it is that they have joined us from. We would also like to thank our funders, the Department of Justice Canada, the Law Foundation of British Columbia, and the Notary Foundation, whose financial support makes production of our webinars possible. And finally, I would love to welcome and introduce our guests. We have Lauren Liang. Lauren is a senior partner at Clark Wilson, which is a full-service law firm based in Vancouver, BC. Lauren is one of just a few English fluent and native Chinese lawyers practicing in a major law firm in BC. She practices in litigation with a focus on commercial litigation and estate and trust litigation, and she has successfully litigated at all levels of court with cases that have been precedent-setting and analyzed across Canada, the US, and China for the precedent-setting effect. Lauren, we are so grateful to have you here today. Welcome to today's webinar.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. We also have Erin Guillen. Erin is a media and communications specialist with the Better Business Bureau. Erin produces and hosts public presentations to community groups, very much like today's presentation on this very topic. We are so excited to have Erin with us here today. We are really looking forward to all the practical information and insights you have to share with us about scams and identity theft. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Us too. So with that, we're going to dive into our questions, starting with the first question, which is for you, Lauren. And which is for you, Erin. And the question is, what is the Better Business Bureau, and what role does it play in helping the average person with scams and identity theft?
Thanks so much, Paula. Yes, when we talk to people about the Better Business Bureau, I think just quick off, there's some sort of misconception maybe that we're some sort of government organization. We're actually a nonprofit organization, and we've been in the community for a really long time. We've got more than 100 independent BBB organizations, not only in Canada, but in the US and also into Mexico. So we're really touching on as many communities as we possibly can. So I represent the BBB that serves mainland BC and also into the Yukon. Just a fun fact for those who don't know how long we've been around. It's probably been as old as maybe your grandparents. We've been around. The first BBB opened 112 years ago. So 1912, that's like Titanic times to put into perspective. The way that we help the average person with scams, identity theft, that sort of thing is in two ways. One of them is our media and our press releases. And then another one is our public presentations, as Paula mentioned. So recently, a couple of our spokespeople were in the news. You might have seen us on CTV Morning Live, Global, CKNW, chatting about Ozempic and different scams that some consumers are falling into right now in terms of just weight loss supplements and how to avoid losing money in those scenarios. And then when it comes to public presentations, just last year, we have been really expanding our reach into different community groups. So high school classrooms. We're in some of the curriculums in North Vancouver, West Van, some Rotary clubs as well, senior homes. We gave a total of just shy of 30 public presentations, and that's something that's new to us and just really pushing forward. And then lastly, just hosting events similar to this, but also partnering with other really, really important, informative panelists. Even next month, we're having a CPA rep come in to talk about tax filing 101, just for people who really don't know where to turn to and just want a better way to sort of move forward. So make sure to always look out for those things at the BBB. Thanks again for having me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Erin, it sounds like there's a big educational component to the work that you're doing at the BBB. And one of the things that we are focused on today, of course, is scams. And what are some of the common scams that we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so every single year, we have what is called a BBB risk report, and what that essentially means is it's a full report that details the top 10 riskiest scams that we're seeing affect Canadians across the country. This latest data, this board is showing the data from 2022. Every single year we release it in March, so the new one's coming out soon. So keep an eye out for that for 2023. I did want to just point out the top three that we've noticed in our most recent data. And as you can see, it's home improvement, cryptocurrency, and advance fee loans. I mean, with home improvement, we are seeing a lot of people really falling for these types of scams. It's harder to say no in person, and what we find is when it comes to home improvement, someone just knocking on your door saying that they're going to be working on a project, maybe in your neighbor's house, and the sort of typical way that this scam works is, maybe you'll put a couple $100 down on this project, and then you never hear back from them at all. That's an unfortunate sort of circumstance that we've heard several times. I was talking just a couple months ago with a woman in North Vancouver who had a very similar experience, and it wasn't only herself, but also the neighbors in that neighborhood as well. I also am noticing that people are wondering, I guess maybe how we weigh risk. So I just wanted to quickly talk about that because we don't just throw all the scams into a hat and pull out one random go and say, okay, this is number one, this is number two, number three. There are sort of three different columns. As you can see, there's exposure, there's susceptibility, and then there's monetary loss. Monetary loss is quite self-explanatory. This is just the average amount that we're seeing lost to these specific type of scams. If you look on number 6, all the way to the right side, $102 for online purchases. That is on the lower end of amount of money we're seeing lost. But then you go up a little bit to, say, number 4, investment. $5,500 on average people are losing. So these are big, big numbers. So that's one of the columns. The other one is exposure in the dark blue. That's how often we're hearing about them when it comes to online purchases. Nearly a third of the scams that we hear to us, a BBB scam tracker, is just about online purchases. And that's because it's just so often and so common. And then the last column is susceptibility. And susceptibility is basically how often consumers are falling for a scam once they're exposed to it. So you can see, at the very, very bottom, number 10, a phishing scam. That might be a text from someone saying, I'm your bank and, I need all your personal information. Most people are able to figure that out and go, okay, clearly that's a scam. They delete it and they don't worry about it. But a small percent does. That's why we see the 3.2% in the susceptibility column. And then right up at the very top, home improvement, 78, almost 79%. So it's a really, really high susceptibility rate, which is really unfortunate. But that's the whole point of why we want to bring up the risk report, is because it shows a sense of what's happening in our communities. If people aren't talking, then we don't know what to report on.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Erin. Such a helpful breakdown of the risks and the factors you're considering. Lauren, this next question is for you. What are some of the telltale signs of a scam?
Thank you, Paula. I think this question really depends on the types of scams people may encounter. So if someone is offering you something that may sound too good to be true, I think we really need to trust our common sense judgment. It may indeed too good to be true. Just give your example. You may be offered something, you just need to pay a very small registration fee, and after that, you don't need to do anything, but you're going to give in an award or large sum of money. So most of the time, that is too good to be true, and indeed, it's not true. So I think, whenever you are being offered such things, people should do some investigation, and that can be some simple Google search. Most likely, you are able to find, online victims talking or speaking, writing about similar offers made to them and turned out to be scams. And also, if someone who may appear to be your family member, a friend, or a colleague, all in a sudden send you an email or text asking you to do something urgent. And if that something urgent involves you transferring money to a third party or to that person, or asking you to buy a gift card, for whatever purpose to be sent to a third party or to that person, then what you should do is you should never do anything before you use your phone number, which is a phone number you already have of this alleged family member or friend or colleague, and makes a phone call to verify by phone calls, rather than relying on anything from the email or from the text, especially those phone numbers are provided, in the email or text. Most likely you will be told, by your family or friend or colleagues that, they have never sent you such a text. Just very recently, I had a client, who was actually in a different country and was purchasing some type of collector cars, from somebody in Canada. They have been doing business together, for I think, a number of years. But this time, the seller sent him a text, I believe, asking him to say, for some reason he has issues with his bank account, and ask the purchaser to this time wire transfer funds to a different friend's bank account, and the person did without doing that verbal verification first, and turned out it's a scammer that hacked into the seller's either phone or email, and then got the number, so send a fake message to the person. And also, sometimes, if you are in a type of online romantic relationship, which is quite common nowadays, given how many people find their significant others, from online. So you should always be skeptical if this person you think you're dating starts to borrow money from you for various reasons, maybe family emergency, or maybe somehow his business, somehow, bank is frozen, and he needs some quick money, in order to deal with one urgent matter. And this is particularly suspicious, if this person, for whatever reasons or many reasons, have been trying to postpone a meeting with you in person. So you might have been dating this person for months without even really see this person in person. And also, other type of scams, maybe many people fall into investment scams. So it may be a platform you invest your funds. And in fact, for the first few months or for the first few transactions, you indeed receive very good returns. And then you are motivated to invest more. Once you start to do that, then you will find that your money, your funds are being tied up, being locked in the account. You are not able to take the money out. So this is also actually those are the type of scams I was contacted the most, from people who have been essentially lost money, sometimes millions of money in this type of investment scams. So I think before you decide to invest in any companies or through any platform that is not well known, then you really should do your investigation before you take the next steps. Again, most likely you will be able to find warnings, on online about, this type of business, so as soon as you see this, it should be red flag, and then you should never, continue with any of such investment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lauren. It's such a comprehensive overview of the number of scams people can fall for. And There's a number of pages on the People's Law School website for anyone who's interested. The Scams and Identity Theft web page has a number of these different types of scams articulated, so you can learn more about that there as well. This next question is also for you, Lauren. What exactly is identity theft?
It is essentially means someone is in possession of your personal information, such as your name, your home address, your birth date, your social insurance number, your medical number, your bank account, your credit card information, the passwords of your many online accounts. They essentially use your personal information to pretend that they are you. And for instance, they may take money out of your bank account. They may do e-transfer out of your bank account, to somebody else. They may make purchases using your credit card. They may apply for a loan in your name. They may sign up for a cell phone in your name. Again, I just recently have a client, who was pursued, by a phone company for bills has been built up for 2 years, and then it's a phone number that the person has no idea. I think what happened was, his identity was stolen, and somebody essentially, purchased and purchased a phone and a phone plan, using his ID, and then so that's totally a serious issue. So it is a criminal offense, in fact, to possess somebody's ID for criminal purpose, and of course, to use somebody else's ID to commit a crime. So if this happened, I think you do need to report this to police.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Erin, this next question is for you. Again, on the topic of identity theft, what information should you take extra care to protect in order to avoid identity theft?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's sort of, I'd say, three prongs to this. So I would say number one is your credit card information. The other one is your SIN number. And then the last one is any social media usernames and passwords. So let's go back to number one, credit card. Your credit card information is very, very valuable. I mean, you can tap and pay most items very quickly on a day-to-day basis. If you don't have a notification, though, when you make these big purchases, you won't know that, say, your identity has been stolen until maybe a bill is racked up at the very end of the month and you look at your credit card statement. So what I would say here is, try to avoid maybe saving your credit card info on different websites that you like to frequent or shop on. I know for myself, it's just a good way of reminding myself, maybe, do I really need this item? And I have to physically go and get my credit card to actually enter the information. And that usually ends up stopping me. And that probably just proves maybe how lazy I might be, or more so maybe that I don't need that item in the first place. The second tip, going back to your SIN number. So especially when it comes to your SIN number, I mean, that is very personal to you, and usually you alone. There are rare cases where you give this information out to other people. Specifically, maybe would be like an employer. We've heard of renters asking for your SIN number as well. The reason why we hear renters saying that is they need your SIN number to sort of run a credit check, just to make sure that you're good for your payments, you have good credit. But they can get the exact same information by having your full name, your address, and your date of birth. That's it. So don't feel that need of that pressure to act immediately and send that over, especially if you haven't even moved in at all. It's just on an application, right? Another one is in the line of SIN numbers for employers. Not a lot of people know that you actually don't need to provide your SIN number until after you've been hired. And I mean, these days, the job search is tough. The job search is long. So, be very aware of where that SIN number is going, especially if it's just going out left, right, and center during your job search. And then lastly, when it comes to social media, I mean, social media is such a powerful tool, and it is a great way to connect with, your friends, even strangers, and maybe even potentially a new connection for networking, right? But the important thing here is if your password is too easy, it doesn't have too many sort of mix of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, some sort of pass key is what we've heard a lot about, making it difficult to crack, then you might have the chance of being hacked. And if you use that same password across all your social medias and into your emails and other sort of different logins, they've got basically a whole treasure trove to sort of dig their way through. So be very mindful of who you're sharing your personal information with, what exactly you're sharing on social media too as well, because if you're sharing the outside of your home or your place of work or your mother's maiden name, then maybe that make it a little bit easier to crack that code.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Erin. This next question is also for you. In this case, you've got an elderly mother, parent who lives alone, and you're worried about her. Are there certain people who are more at risk than others of being scammed?
Yeah, no, this is a good one too. So we see a wide variety of people losing money and being scammed that report to us at BBB. But when it comes actually to the monetary value, in our most recent data shows that the highest loss is actually between those aged 35 to 44. In that most recent data, reports are showing that that specific age group, 35 to 44, is losing $500 a year to scams. And those are the ones that are reporting it. So obviously, there are certain parts that we're not hearing about or talking about, but that's the people that are telling us actively. The lowest sort of monetary loss age group is between 18 to 24. I mean, understandably, they're probably not making as much money and likely don't have as much money to spend. And then just on the other side of the spectrum, ages 65 and plus, they're losing about $239 on average. So this overall or overarching thread is there's a concern for these stats in terms of they're still on the rise. I mean, across the board in different age groups, they're just slightly going up. We don't want that trend to continue. We don't want that trend to go up. And um, that's why we really want to sort of hone home how important it is to have these sort of conversations. Distill this sort of this fear of sharing a time that you have been scammed yourself, because it helps the next person avoid it down the line.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Erin. This next question is for you, Lauren. We've been talking about avoiding scams and what to watch out for. If you are scammed or you think you've been scammed, what's the first thing that you should do?
Um, if the scam involves you having provided your bank information or your credit card information to the scammer, then it's really, really important that you phone your credit card company right away to cancel your credit card. And you may also want to contact your, not may want to, you should to contact your bank or may pay a physical visit to your bank, essentially to stop any potential transactions that may go through your bank. If you have not really provided this type of, sensitive financial information to the scammers, let's say, you just provided your name and you provided your home address. Obviously, you're not going to relocate, just because, you have provided your home address to the person. But I think, you should, as Erin has just mentioned, you should probably share the information with your loved ones, your friends, people you care about, to make sure, they do not fall into this trap again. And also, there are certain other actions, for instance, reporting to police, reporting to certain government agencies, which, I can touch base, in probably in our next sessions, in the next sessions.
Beautiful. And um, the follow-up question for you, here's an example. I bought an expensive gaming equipment online and it turned out to be defective. I tried to contact the seller, but they're ignoring my emails. So what are my options here?
That's really a good question, because your options depend on whether you are dealing with a legit business or you are dealing with scammers. If you bought the equipment, from a legit business and there's a proper contract signed, then you should first check, whether the contract, to see whether there is any term, essentially it's a cooling off period that would allow a purchaser to walk away from the contract purchase without any penalty, without any reason. I would say, most of the contracts don't have that term, but some may. But there is in certain industry, it's mandatory. For instance, if a purchaser is buying a pre-sale, from a developer, then it's mandatory that, there is cool-off period where the purchaser can just walk away within that period, without giving any reason, without any penalty. Again, if you are dealing with a legit business, but they are ignoring your email, then I think that's really a bad customer service. You should report it to Customer Protection BC. You can report it to Erin's department, BBB. You may also, of course, take legal action by either engaging legal counsel or do it yourself. You can first issue a demand letter. So many people may have heard about this, demand letter. Essentially, it's a letter to say, I'm so-and-so, I have this issue with you, and I demand, you take certain actions. And in this type of demand letter, you may also have warning by saying that, if I don't hear back from you by certain date, or certain actions are not taken by certain dates, then I will consider commencing legal action. So that's when you are dealing with legit business, somebody who are real there, they're just not responding to you. However, if you are dealing with scammers and this is a scam, then the seller's identity and their whereabouts are very likely to be unknown. So there's really not much you can do, in that circumstances, other than reporting the incident to a few agencies. Like for instance, you can report to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. You can report to BBB. You can certainly report to police. But very unlikely, I would say, based on my experience, police very likely will not take any action because they consider this type of issues or disputes to be business disputes, commercial disputes, that they have probably other stuff to worry about. But you never know whether this type of relating to the same seller might have been there may be many issues relating to the same sellers, so the police, may have received multiple reports from different people, and that may prompt the police, to do something. So it's really, it does not hurt, for you to report to police, it's just, you have to have the expectation that, unlikely police is going to do something, about this type of fraud.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That's really helpful. Erin, this next question is for you. Now, in the case where your credit card is stolen, and let's say it's used to make multiple big ticket purchases, will you need to pay for the things that are bought with your credit card?
Yeah, so here's the thing. If someone did swipe your card and bought a lot of expensive big ticket items, you need to catch it within a certain amount of time. That's what's really important here, because if you do and you catch it within, it's usually 3 months, 90 days sort of window, and you let your financial institutions know, there is a good amount that you'll get back, if not all of it. Most banks offer sort of a level of fraud protection, and that means that they want you to make sure that you can trust them as a banking place to be with. So it is, though, a very lengthy process to go through, reporting and making sure you can get that money back. So it's best, obviously, to do your best to try to avoid having that information leak, or keeping a tight grasp on where your credit card actually is at the end of the day. One thing I did want to point out too is, it sort of the caveat here is, if you've used your credit card for a big ticket purchase and you end up getting scammed, That's a more gray area, I would say. The reason I say that is because I was chatting with another victim of a cryptocurrency scam, and she herself went and did the purchases for investing into specific cryptocurrency. So much so that she went all the way from, an initial investment of only $250 to $1,600, or sorry, 16,000, which was boggled my mind. But $16,000 she paid in credit card expenses, and she went to her bank and they said, you did this yourself, this was your decision that you made. So they were not able to refund her that money. So that's really important here, is if it's an unauthorized purchase that you did not have anything to do with, then you generally have a good chance to get that money back. It is a lengthy process, whereas if it's more so you making that purchase at the end of the day and you're very, you're responsible adult, then unfortunately it does come to you at the end of the day.
Great, thank you. It's good for everybody to know that, to avoid that happening to them. Lauren, this next question is for you. I got tricked into donating thousands of dollars to a fake charity. Will I get my money back if I sue them?
Paula, that's really a complicated question. I will give a non-answer and then summarize with a short answer to that question. So obviously you won't get back your money from the fake charity because it does not exist. So if you sue, then you will sue the individuals or entities, behind this fake charity. So the challenges of a lawsuit involving scammers, as I have previously mentioned, is that most often you do not know the identity and the whereabouts of the scammers. So in Canada, once you commence a lawsuit by filing a notice of civil claim, which is essentially is to file it to court to commence the legal action. So in order to move the lawsuit forward, you have to serve the notice of civil claim on the defendants by personal service. So personal service basically means you have to hand deliver the claim to the hands of the defendants. So that can be done by yourself, by somebody professional, like a process server, or by any of your friends or agent. So this typically would require you to know the identity and whereabouts of the scammers, the defendants. So when you, as I said, when you are dealing with scammers, that's first step. Often you would have no idea who they are and where are they. So that's the first hurdle in pursuing legal action against scammers. You can certainly apply. It's not like in every instance you would be able to do personal service on the defendants. Sometimes even if you know the true identity of the defendants, where they live, but they can be invasive. They can do for months, avoiding you being able to serve the documents on them. So you can certainly apply to the court to get an alternative service order, so which permits you to serve through other means. For instance, if you can prove to the courts that the whereabouts or the person is invasive, you cannot have effect personal service on this person. But you have the person's email address. If you can prove that this is an email address the defendants have used before, or phone numbers that the person has used before, and this phone number can accept texts, then you can persuade the court to give you an alternative service order to allow you to serve the person by email or by text message. So let's say the scammers finally were served through the alternative service orders. And then most likely because they are scammers, they would not jump up to say, hey, we are the scammers, so I'm going to defend this claim. So if they don't file a response to the civil claim by the deadline after they were served, then you can proceed to get a default judgment against the defendants. So that means, finally you get a court order against those defendants, the scammers. The biggest hurdle in pursuing legal action against scammers is that, most likely you won't be able to enforce that judgment against the scammer Again, you may not know their identity, you may not know their whereabouts, but most importantly, if you find them, you do not know whether they have any assets, in their name in order to allow you to enforce the judgment. So you may have a judgment, with millions of dollars or $100,000, but, it may become a hollow judgment in a sense of you are not able to enforce it. So the short answer to this question is whether you are able to get your money back is if you sue them and get a judgment, you may not get your money back unless you know the identity and whereabouts the person involved, and also they have assets that can enforce against.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I wish the answer was different for anybody who gets scammed, but thank you for painting out what the hurdles likely are if you're in that situation. This next question is for you, Erin. When should you report a scam to the Better Business Bureau, and what can they do to help you?
Yeah, well, hey, the simple answer here is anytime you're interacting or been interacting with a scammer is a great time to tell us about it. And also, as Lauren mentioned, Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, your police, if it does include sort of going to that extent, there is so much power in telling your story, and it's free to submit your scam report to BBB. It's as easy as going to our website, filling out just a super quick sort of questionnaire about your experience. The thing I want, all of the people in this webinar to know is, you're contributing to our yearly risk report. Every single year, this data is all sort of gathered together, and you're playing a huge, huge part to help reduce the stigma around being scammed. In terms of how we want to help and how we can help the public, I mean, at the end of the day, we are not an enforcement agency, and we can't just go directly to a business or a scammer and demand for your money back, or be any sort of collections agency of sorts. We are in the business, though, of aligning consumers with trusted businesses so that they don't have to deal with scams in the first place. So there might be times, when a consumer has reported that they were scammed by an accredited business, and we take those allegations very seriously. So if those paths do cross, we are planned to take a full investigation into whether this report is factual, and we'll reach out to the accredited business to fact check it too. Our role really is helping facilitate clear conversations between consumers and businesses, proper businesses, not fake businesses. um, and yeah, that's really the long short of it, is just we don't have any of this data if not for the consumers talking about it. I believe the CAFC quotes right around 5% of people actually report fraud in the first place. So we're seeing a tiny, tiny sliver of what's actually happening in the community, and we really, really need to see a bigger sort of piece of the pie.
Excellent. So the real takeaway there is report, so that other people can gain knowledge about the types of scams that are out there and avoid them as well. And CAFC, that's the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Lauren, this is the last of our prepared questions, and then we'll turn to the live Q&A. When should I commence a legal action against a scammer?
Okay, so I think my comments in the previous question might have touched on this question. I don't think there is a catch-all answer that I can give, but for people who are considering legal action, I think there are a few factors you need to consider. One is, always remember you need to have somebody to be named as a defendant. There may be occasions at the very beginning you do not know the identity of the person, like a hit and run. You may be suing somebody, but you don't know who is the driver. You can always have the John Doe or that type of name, to be in the pleading. But at some point, that person needs to be replaced with actual individual or entity. So that's one of the factors. And again, the next factor for you to consider is, you do need to be able to serve the person, again, either through personal service or alternative service. That's something to consider. And also in the event that you win and obtain a judgment, either a default judgment or a judgment, after a hearing, are you able to enforce the judgment? So is it worth your time, effort, and potentially legal expenses to pursue it. So I think, before anyone deciding to commence a legal action, I think it will be wise for you to speak to a litigation lawyer as to the your chance of success, and also any particular hurdles you have in your case, and before you so that you can make an informed decision as to whether you want to pursue further. And I also want to emphasize here, because many people have the misunderstanding. They think once they start the action, there's no way to turn back, so almost like they have to pursue it to the end. That's not the case. You can always at any time to discontinue the action. So I think it's actually sometimes it may be a good idea. You do not know what type of scammers you're dealing with. Sometimes the scammers, even though they are scammers, they do have something, they don't want to run certain risk. Maybe they would be scamming many people who do not dare to sue them. Maybe if they know you're the person who is suing them, they may come back to deal with you individually, and you may get some of your money back. So you may consider spending maybe some money to invest in the initial stage of the litigation, to see whether you are able to indict some type of negotiation from the scammers, and get some of your money back. But if that does not work, then at some point, I think you need to make a decision as, should I pursue further, or should I just, stop my bleeding right here now? So again, it's something, you need to consider many factors, and it's best, for you to speak to a litigation lawyer that who can essentially, assess the situation for you and guide you through the process.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I've got a question here that has a lot of upvotes, and I'm going to put this to you as the speakers. I've heard that scammers can now impersonate people over video and audio calls now too. How can we protect ourselves from that when doing a verification for a money request?
Yeah, so this is something that we're just starting to see come into BBB. It's still quite rare, but directly tied to, I guess, AI, because with the ability to sort of scan voices and scan faces, we're seeing a lot of people use that potentially for, on the lighter side, having Taylor Swift sing a song that was originally sung by Ariana Grande. But on the scarier side, having your mom what's it called, sound real, but it's actually a scammer in behind the scenes. So what we say, I would say, for any of these interactions, come up with some sort of passcode, passkey. Ask, okay, hey, if this is actually my mom, my sister, my brother, what is the password that we agreed upon, to make sure that we were, making sure that this is a real conversation. That's one of the ways that we would want to make sure that, you can continue talking to this person and making sure that this is actually an authentic conversation. But that's probably one of the tips that I can provide for now.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about the example that Lauren gave at the beginning, where we're talking about those emails that come in and you're initiating that call to the person to verify whether or not it's legit. Perhaps the same thing would apply here, right? If the call is incoming, you can always disconnect, and if it seems suspicious, you could always be the one to initiate. I don't know if that would fully protect given the technology that's out there, but um, that might also be helpful. Lauren, did you have anything to add to that
Yeah,
question?
I don't have too much to add. Oh, I think in my firm, for instance, we do wire transfers all the time. The law firms are actually targets of a lot of those scams. In a sense of maybe I think the scammers somehow would hack into our clients email box, and then or they would be sending us email to say can you wire transfer the funds rather than to the previous instruction to a different one. And then it's a mandatory requirement that we have to, the lawyer or the lawyer's assistant, we have to make the phone call, and in fact the phone call has to be a number we have on file. and we have to speak to the client. And of course, I think, Aaron, what you have mentioned, the passcode is perfect, but when we speak to our client, we may, in the conversation, ask certain stuff, we think only our client would know about it. And to verify, very recently, there's a new kind of scam. A lot of times, lawyers may rely on our assistant, to do the verbal verification. And I think the scammers now, they see the opportunity, because even if the lawyer and the assistant are both in the office, a lot of times, the assistant may report back to the lawyer by saying, I have done the verbal verification. And that email, we have to break that email chain, so now we have the new requirement that, that between the lawyer and the assistant, that confirmation has to be verbal, cannot be email, because the hacker can be monitoring our email and then fake an email from the assistant to the lawyer by saying, I have verified, so those type of scams are very, very prevalent now.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This next question is from anonymous attendee. I was notified by Equifax that my email was discovered on the dark web. How will scammers use it? Apart from changing my password, should I do anything else? My email is the login for many websites that I visit too.
This is a difficult one, because yeah, if your email is out there already, then we know that you'll probably be getting a lot of spam messages on your email, potentially into your social media feeds as well. I'd say the first thing is change your password as quickly as you can across the board. Try to change it up, not just make it one single password across every single social media or login. And then if it gets that far, maybe just open a completely new profile. I mean, it's really unfortunate because it's a lot of work, but it will save you in the long run in terms of keeping you safe from identity theft, and also maybe just cleaning up the clutter in your email box. Yeah, that's what I would say for starters.
Yeah, and also think, maybe, I mean, it may not be a good idea to use your email address as the username, because that's just very easy to essentially for people to guess.
Beautiful. Thank you. Another question here. What is the process to report a scam and seek help?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of BBB, we have a portion of our website just sort of specifically for reporting scams. So it's bbb.org/scam tracker. It is sort of the central place where you can walk through this quick step of who you've been scammed by, how much money you've lost, when it happened. What we try to do is have someone potentially reach out to you. It's more rare because we do have an influx of scams time to time. But if you're really looking to get a response back, I would say emailing our team directly. I had attached my email down below if anyone's looking that further, if you had further questions, or giving us a call as well. I mean, that's a great way to get in touch, because sometimes things do get lost in emails and all these forms and such. But yeah, having that conversation with someone is really, really key. And not only reporting it to one specific agency, because we can't do the work on our own. The Canadian Anti-Fraud Center is doing great work, as well as your local police, but none of us know what to dive into and investigate if we're not being told about it in the first place.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I note that the scam tracker link was put into the chat, and we'll also provide a link to that with the recording of today's webinar on the web page that hosts it.
Perfect.
Lauren, a question for you. This is a question that came in by email before the webinar today, and we had talked about this briefly. What happens when you get a ton of spam text messages, WhatsApp messages, and phone calls? And the questions were, am I doing something wrong? And what can be done to minimize or prevent this?
I don't think the person is doing anything wrong by receiving those type of texts, because I don't believe I did anything wrong. I occasionally receive this type of emails, texts as well. I think, we just need to train ourselves to be more sensitive to this type of text. And you can just tell, by reading that text, this is not something that from my friend or from somebody, who I know really kind of is trying to get hold of me. So I think if you believe it's not a legit message, I would suggest, do not ever to respond. I do feel like the more you respond, you engage, the more likely you will receiving more and more this type of messages. I always think, if a person is texting me and trying to ask me certain things, if I don't respond, and the person has my other contact as well, the person can contact me through other means, rather than through this text, so I typically do not respond if I'm suspicious, of the message, because it's just coming from nowhere, and just a message may say, hi, I met you the other day at dinner, I would like to catch up, and then I knew who I had dinner with, so I would be thinking, no, I think this is quite suspicious. So I typically do not respond. I think gradually, that's probably would diminish. But the more you engage, the more I think you're likely going to get those type of messages.
Thank you so much. Aaron, anything to add?
I would just say, to piggyback off of what Lauren said, take your time. What we say at BBB is take 5. If that's 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, take a moment to really think about, is this a real interaction that I'm having? Do I really want to make this purchase? Is this potentially a scam? That gives you a good amount of time to talk with the people that you love and trust, to sort of verify and just run it by someone that's just not by yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you. Here's another question from another anonymous attendee. My credit card has been hacked 7 times. My bank and credit card company won't help. What do I do?
Ooh, wow. Okay. 7 times. I'm surprised you've got that you're racking up several times there. Yeah, I'm not sure your situation with your bank. I would definitely consider maybe opening or closing that specific account and trying to open a completely new one, because it seems like that information is wide open, unfortunately. And then going from there, moving forward, being very, very vigilant with where that information is being entered to. I mean, it only really takes one sort of scam, faulty website for your credit card information to be shared, not only with there, but probably across other untrustworthy sources.
This next question, what should be done to protect my personal computer or other devices?
I would be very wary of the applications that you're downloading on your computer in the first place. Most of these laptop manufacturers do a great job of having sort of virus scanners to make sure if you're downloading something that it's all safe and good to go. But if you're on some browsers, that might not be Chrome or Safari. I mean, every sort of web browser has its potential worries, but making sure you have that sort of built up. And if you don't, then going and asking a friend, saying, hey, like, how do I make sure I can block sort of these pop-up ads from showing up on my computer? What are some trusted websites? Because that's really, really key. One thing I did want to add is, I feel like there's a lot of agreement that when you're going to a website, if you see that sort of lock pad in the corner, HTTPS, that means it stands for secure and it's a good website and it's good to go. These days, scammers unfortunately can create websites that sort of have the same certification and look and act the same way as a legit site looks. So what you need to be looking out for in this case is, any sort of red flags when you're making a purchase online. Are we seeing that, they know your name as a consumer? Do they ask for maybe some an extent of information that you're not used to providing past your credit card information? They're asking for your SIN number for some reason for a purchase, or access to your other accounts, your banking info. I'm looking sort of for those tiny red flags from the start.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. There's a question here, again, it received a number of upvotes. It's more of a high level question. How can we get governments to create legislation to make scamming more difficult?
Ooh, that is
Anything
a tough
on
one.
that?
I mean, here's the thing. If we we're able to thankfully eradicate scammers from Canada, we're going to get scammers from the US and from everywhere else in the world. So I think, as it's a great idea. I think it would be fantastic to be, more robust with how we approach scammers. But it's also understanding that at the end of the day, the responsibility cannot lie completely on external factors. It does have to do with us and how we interact online and how we interact with people over the phone, where we place our business. We have to be practicing due diligence and being really, really careful with who we trust with our money and who we're doing business with at the end of the day, because things will fall through the cracks, and we just hope it's not you ending up as a part of a scam statistic.
Beautiful. We have time for one last question and a short last question. And there's one here that I think would be great to answer, which is what should be the process if your cell phone is stolen?
I wouldn't say maybe stolen. Okay, well, I'll talk about a personal experience just really quick. I was on an international trip in Australia and I lost my phone on transit, and that was a terrifying experience to happen, and it basically felt like it was stolen to me. I had no idea where it was. Thankfully, I was able to locate it with um, uh, geo tracking with my iPhone, and that was able to locate where it specifically was. I got in contact with the person who had my phone. But if that's not your experience and you don't have a way to, send a message to your phone or have some sort of shutdown, I would just try to log in from another device. Usually, phones have a login on online. If you don't have a login online, go to the store where you bought it. Hopefully, you bought it without sort of a third party reseller. You can go to, whether that's Samsung, that's Apple, somewhere else, Google Pixel, the store, and say, hey, I need to make sure my information is safe. Is there any way that we can connect my information or shut it down? Because thankfully, if you lose a phone, if you lose a laptop, um, there are ways that you can verify that it's you and shut out that information to make sure no one else uses it. But also log out of all your social media accounts, change the passwords on every single thing, because worst case comes to worst, they will have access to really anything that was on that phone. So do your due diligence and work across the board to change as many usernames as passwords as you can.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Erin, is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't have a chance to cover or that's sort of jumped out at you while we were going through today's webinar?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say there are no dumb questions. Really, if there's a problem, hopefully there's an answer for it. And the best way to sort of tackle this issue of scams and identity fraud is just having a conversation with the people in your life. I mean, there's so much shame still, unfortunately, with scams and identity theft that people just don't talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, we can't find a solution. So having that conversation with a friend, a loved one, a colleague, just really anyone in your life will really go the long distance at the end of the day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Erin. And it's such a great point. And I'm so glad that we have today's webinar as an opportunity to talk about how these scams work, situations that arise, and to destigmatize that experience if it does happen to you, that you can talk about it, you can report it, and that that will, in fact, help other people to avoid the same scam or similar type of scam. So thank you to you. Thank you, Lauren, for presenting. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you and thank you for the questions, and thank you to our People's Law School team who have been busy behind the scenes answering everybody's questions. So thank you again. With that, we are going to wrap up for today, wishing all of you a wonderful week, and thank you again for joining us.